On the barren world of Arca, the sky hung heavy in shades of red and orange. Wind swept across endless plains of cracked stone. In a small adobe hut at the edge of a dry riverbed, Mara watched her daughter, Lena, as she lay on a simple cot. Lena's small body was frail and cool to the touch. Her breathing was slow and labored. Mara pressed a rough cloth to Lena's forehead, trying to feel any warmth. Mara had seen many storms, but none threatened her heart like this illness. Winds carried the bitter scent of sand and metal. The air tasted cold like distant ice. She whispered soft words of comfort, but inside, she felt a storm of fear that she could not calm. For weeks, Mara had taken Lena to the village healers. They mixed herbs with water and chanted old prayers, but the disease would not yield. Each dawn, Mara held hope that Lena would show a sign of improvement, but each morning brought more weakness. Villagers whispered as they passed. Some stopped to offer pity, others gave curt nods of sympathy. Mara felt the weight of their stares. She wondered if they thought she was too late, or if they believed Lena was already lost to the winds of this harsh world. Lena's laughter had once filled the hut like sunshine. She chased small desert birds and collected tiny stones that shone like stars. Mara remembered how Lena would reach for her hand, full of life and curiosity. Now, Lena lay silent, her hand pale and thin as a battered leaf. Mara kept those memories close, clutching them as if they could bring Lena back. Each time Lena's breath rattled, Mara's heart seized. She spent long hours brushing back Lena's dark hair and promising that she would find a cure. One night, under a sky full of unfamiliar constellations, Mara heard a strange tale. A traveling trader spoke of humans, beings from beyond the red suns. He said humans had ships that could heal any wound and cure any illness. He told of their metal structures that glowed with life. For Mara, the words brought a flicker of hope. She closed her eyes and imagined a human standing by her side, offering a new kind of medicine. Even the simplest cure would be enough to save Lena from her slow fading. Mara clung to that thought as she stared at her daughter's closed eyes. Willing dreams of humans to become reality died at dawn. Mara left the village on a broken mule. Lena lay wrapped in a thin blanket, her small frame heavy against Mara's side. The village healers called after her, warning that the humans were dangerous, that outsiders brought unknown risks. Mara's heart pounded, but she would not turn back. She whispered to Lena that they were going to find help. Each step felt like a lifetime. The mule stumbled over jagged rocks and thorny bushes, but Mara guided it with gentle hands and fierce determination in her heart. They traveled for days under a scorching sun. Water ran low and food grew scarce. Mara shared her last piece of dried fruit with Lena, who managed a weak smile. The wind carried whispers of sand, and the ground sometimes shook with distant tremors. Mara pressed on, driven by the memory of Lena's laughter. She thought of the trader's words, imagining human hands that could heal. If she could reach the landing pad, she believed a cure would follow and Lena would rise again. Her mind raced with questions. Would the humans understand her plight? Could their science work on alien flesh? On the third night, Mara heard a low hum in the sky. She climbed a dusty hill and saw it, a massive silver ship. Its hull curved like a sleeping whale. Lights along its surface flickered softly, casting cool shadows on the ground. Mara knelt beside Lena and watched her chest rise and fall. Even in sleep, Lena's face held the faintest color. Mara felt tears slip down her cheeks. She reached out and touched the ship's hull, hoping it would bring the miracle they needed. With careful steps, Mara led the mule toward the glowing pad at the ship's base. Lena rested on her lap as they crossed a field of strange metal markers. Mara prayed that the humans would see her daughter's need and not turn them away. The ship's ramp descended with a quiet hiss, and Mara felt her pulse quicken. Soon, they would pass through doors she had only dreamt of. Soon, she hoped, Lena would know warmth and health again. Hope returned to Mara's heart, fierce and bright against the red sky. Mara's pulse raced as the ramp hissed open and she and Lena crossed the threshold. Into the ship's interior. The hallway stretched before them, lit by soft blue lights. The walls gleamed with polished metal and smooth panels. The air hummed with quiet power. Mara held Lena close and took a steady breath. She lowered Lena gently and pressed a hand to the nearest wall. A soft hum filled the air. Distant voices, spoken a language Mara did not know. She hoped they would understand her. She stepped forward, carrying Lena, and followed the hum toward a cluster of figures in white coats. A tall human noticed them first. She raised a hand and called out in gentle tones. A small device on her wrist glowed, and a voice spoke back in a strange tongue. To Mara's relief, the human shifted to broken common trade speech and said, "We are here to help." The human introduced himself as Dr. Evans. He knelt beside Mara and cradled Lena in his arms. Mara felt his warmth and calm energy. Dr. Evans held a small sensor near Lena's wrist. Numbers flickered on a screen. Mara watched each digit, hoping for a rise in Lena's heart rate. Drive Evans spoke softly. He asked Mara about Lena's illness. Mara summoned the words she knew. Fever, weak, no cure. Dr. Evans nodded and tapped on a pad. Around them, crew members moved with purpose. They carried small cases and wore masks that covered their faces. Mara felt a lock of fear loosen. Human nurse offered water in a clear cup. Mara took it gratefully and handed it to Lena. The daughter sipped slowly. Dr. Evans smiled and said, "Good, she is strong." He used another tool to measure Lena's temperature. Mara closed her eyes and held Lena's hand. She felt hope flicker again. Drive Evans stood and said he would take Lena to the med bay for tests. Mara looked into his kind eyes and nodded. She asked if she could go too. Dr. Evans answered, "Of course." Together, they carried Lena down a broad hallway that curved gently under soft lights. They entered the med bay, a large room filled with glowing screens and gentle machines. A circle of human scientists gathered around a central pod. They greeted Mara with polite bows. One scientist spoke. "We need small samples for tests to find the right treatment." Mara swallowed hard but agreed. The lead nurse prepared a tiny tube. She pricked Lena's finger with a fine needle. Lena winced and closed her eyes. Mara kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'm here." The tube filled with red liquid. The scientist took tissue swabs from the back of Lena's ear. The work was quick and careful. When the tests finished, Dr. Evans guided Mara to a waiting area. She sat on a soft bench and watched the machines hum. The air smelled clean and fresh. Lena rested on a special gurney under a thin sheet. Mara patted Lena's hand and held her close, silent with worry and hope. Minutes stretched like hours. Mara stared at the door. She remembered the trader's tale of human cures that could save a world. She prayed that this time the tale was true. Dry tears slid down her cheeks. She brushed them away. Inside, machines recorded Lena's signs and traced patterns on glass screens. Drive Evans returned with a small tablet. He showed Mara lines of color and symbols. He said that results were promising but not yet clear. They had found a compound that might fight the disease. Mara felt her breath catch. She asked, "When can we start?" Dr. Evans answered, "Soon. We will prepare medicine." As Dr. Evans left to gather supplies, Mara knelt beside Lena. She smoothed back Lena's hair and brushed a curl from her face. Lena's chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm. Mara whispered, "Hold on, my child. You are safe." Lena stirred and opened her eyes. She smiled weakly. Mara's heart filled with warmth. Lena's eyes, though tired, glowed with a small spark of life. Drive Evans returned with a clear vial and a small syringe. He placed a gentle hand on Mara's shoulder and said, "This may help." Mara nodded and held her breath as the needle touched Lena's arm. The medicine flowed in and Lena closed her eyes. Mara watched, her gaze fixed on Lena's face. Moments passed. Lena's breathing stayed regular. Slowly, her body warmed. Mara pressed her cheek to Lena's hand and thanked the humans for their care. Drive Evans watched with hope in his eyes. After that first dose, Dr. Evans led Mara and Lena to a small cabin nearby. It had a soft bed, gentle lights, and a view of the red plains outside. Mara lay beside Lena and held her close. For the first time in weeks, Lena did not shiver. Mara closed her eyes and let hope cradle her dreams. When dawn light filled the cabin, Lena stirred. She blinked and sat up slowly. Mara held her daughter's hand, her heart soaring at the sight of life returning. Lena felt warmth under the thin blanket. She ran her fingers over the smooth sheet and tested her arm for pain. The fever had faded. Mara pressed a cool cloth to Lena's forehead and felt a gentle heat. It was the first time in weeks that Lena had real warmth on her skin. She drew a slow breath and looked around the cabin. Soft lights glowed overhead. Through the small window, she saw endless red sand stretching under a pale sky. Drive Evans entered, quietly, holding a clear cup of water. He knelt beside Lena and offered it to her. Lena sipped and smiled weakly. "Thank you," she whispered. Drive Evans nodded and said in gentle tones, "You are strong." Mara's eyes filled with tears as she watched the exchange. Drive Evans placed a hand on Mara's shoulder and smiled warmly. In that moment, Mara felt an unspoken bond form between them. She saw kindness in his eyes and believed her daughter was safe. After Lena drank, Dr. Evans checked the syringe site on her arm. The tiny mark had faded overnight. He used a small scanner to read her vital signs. Numbers and colored lines danced across the display. Drive Evans tapped the screen and spoke softly to a nurse nearby. Mara watched the professionals move with calm purpose. They worked together as if they had done this 1,000 times. Yet each touch and each glance carried care. Mara realized how different human healing could be from the rituals of her world. Here, science and empathy worked as one. Mara rose and stepped to the cabin door. She peeked into the hallway and saw corridors of shining metal. Other cabins stood in neat rows. She felt both awe and a longing for home. A soft hum vibrated through the floor. She thought of her village under red suns and the pity that once lay on the faces of her people. Here, no pity existed, only focus and hope. Mara returned to Lena and sat by her side. She smoothed back her daughter's dark hair and whispered, "You will get better." The human ship's gentle sway reminded Mara that they floated above the red plains. She asked Dr. Evans what would happen next. He explained that they would run more tests and give Lena another dose of medicine. Then they would watch her over 2 days to be sure the disease had stopped. Mara nodded and asked, "Can Lena stay here?" Dr. Evans smiled and replied, "Of course. This cabin is yours until she is well." Mara felt relief flood her chest. She thanked him softly and held Lena's hand. As the day passed, Mara watched the crew work. Scientists moved through labs with small trays of samples. Engineers checked panels that glowed with green lights. Mara saw screens that showed maps of stars and strange symbols. She listened to beeps and whirs and felt an excitement she had never known. She thought of her home world's simple huts in cracked stone. Here, humans built ships that floated through space and offered hope to those in need. Mara felt respect grow in her heart. At midday, Dr. Evans returned with a plate of food. He placed simple rations on a metal tray, soft paste of grain, water, and a sweet gel that tasted of fruit. Lena tried a spoonful and gave a small laugh. The gel felt cool and fresh. Mara tasted a bit herself and found it mild and kind to her stomach. It reminded her of a memory from her own childhood, eating sweet fruit by the riverbed. Mara felt tears she did not expect. She smiled at Lena as the daughter's eyes sparkled with new strength. In the evening, Mara helped Lena drift into sleep. She held her close and felt a gentle breath on her cheek. Outside, the ship's lights flashed softly against the dark sky. Mara thought of the traders' tales, of humans as healers who crossed the stars. She saw now that tales could hold truth. She whispered a prayer of thanks to the unknown gods of her people. She promised herself that she would repay this kindness one day. Before sleep took her, Mara sat by a small viewport. She looked at the red world laid out below. The plains stretched like an ocean of rust. She felt a fierce love for this land, and for the daughter she carried in her heart. She also felt gratitude for the humans who gave her hope. Tomorrow would bring more tests. Tomorrow might bring new challenges. But tonight, Mara let hope cradle her as softly as her daughter's. Arm around her waist, Mara woke to the soft hum of the ship's engines. Lena lay beside her on the narrow bed, breathing evenly for 2 days. The human medicine had eased the worst of Lina's fever. Mara brushed back Lina's dark hair and felt relief warm her chest. She dressed slowly and slipped from the cabin. Into the quiet corridor, soft lights guided her steps. She passed closed doors and glanced down at the red world below. She thought of home and how swiftly fortunes could change. As Mara stepped into the wider hall, she heard raised voices. A group of alien officials had gathered near the main airlock. They wore bright robes and held glowing staffs. Their leader, Envoy Sorali, pointed at the ship's hull and spoke in harsh tones. At their side stood a human officer, tense and polite. Mara's heart pounded. She hurried closer with Lena in her arms and stood behind Dr. Evans, who knelt beside the officer. Envoy Sorali, Dr. Evans said in calm common trade speech, "We care for this child under universal right to heal." Sorali's eyes narrowed. She spoke in a cold voice that Mara could only guess. "Your presence here breaks our world's quarantine. You endanger all," the human officer translated. The council would not allow humans to practice medicine on alien bodies. They demanded Lina's return and Dr. Evans's departure within the hour. Mara's breath caught. She pressed Lena closer. The daughter stirred and opened her eyes, fear flickering on her face. Mara stroked Lina's arm and spoke softly. "I'm here, my love," the crew around them murmured. Some humans clenched their fists, ready to protest. Others exchanged worried looks. Mara felt shame and anger. How could salvation be forbidden? She glared at the envoy and lifted her chin, even as her legs trembled. Drive Evans rose and held up a hand. "Envoy," he said, voice firm, "we will not abandon this child. We can share our methods and honor your laws." Sorali shook her head. She stepped forward and fixed Mara with a stern gaze. When the officer spoke, Mara heard the harsh words, "Mother, you will face exile if you refuse. Let your daughter go now." Ravi, the human officer, offered a quiet apology to Mara. Tears pricked her eyes. That night, under muted lights in a side corridor, Dr. Evans found Mara. The corridor led to service tunnels behind the ship's plating. The air was cool and smelled of metal. "Dr. Evans whispered, we have one chance. A hidden lab in the lower deck can finish the final tests. From there, we can prove the cure works on alien biology. Then the council may relent." Mara uncovered Lina's face. The girl lay pale, but peaceful in sleep. Mara felt a surge of hope and fear. She nodded and wrapped Lena in a soft blanket. They followed Dr. Evans into the tunnel. The walls squeezed. Close, pipes clanged above them, and distant lights flickered. Mara's heart pounded with each careful step. She thought of the village healer's chants and of the traders' stories of human ships. Here she moved through human corridors, trusting strangers with her daughter's life. After walking for what felt like an age, they reached a steel door marked with an icon of a caduceus. Drivey Evans tapped the code on a panel. The door slid open. With a hiss, inside lay a small lab illuminated by greenish panels. A table stood at its center, surrounded by machines and glass vials. A soft machine noise filled the room. A human nurse stepped out from behind a console, nodded to Dr. Evans, and motioned Mara inside. Mara laid Lena on the table's thin mattress. The nurse adjusted Lina's pillow and smiled gently. Drive Evans checked the girl's wrist with a scanner and tapped commands on a tablet. "We have a new compound," he said softly. "If we can stabilize it, Lena will recover fully." Mara watched as he poured a clear liquid into a small injector. The machines hummed as they calibrated. Outside the door, the envoy's voice echoed in the corridor. Mara froze, clutching Lina's hand. Dr. Evans glanced at the panel. "We have 10 minutes before they arrive," he whispered. He pressed a button and locked the door. A soft click told Mara they were secure for now. The reporter in Mara stirred and opened her eyes. She saw the glowing vials and the kind faces around her. Drive Evans injected the new medicine. Lena flinched, then relaxed. Mara knelt beside her and whispered encouragement. The nurse monitored Lina's signs on a glowing screen. Lines traced. Her heartbeat and temperature. Each pulse felt like a promise. Mara's throat tightened as she watched the numbers climb towards safety. In that hidden lab, human and alien worked side by side. Laughter flickered when Lena squeezed her mother's finger. Drive, Evans smiled at Mara, his eyes bright. We will show the council that this cure works, he said. Mara held Lena close, her tears wet on the blanket. She felt a fierce pride and tender relief. Here, in this secret place. Cultures clashed, but hope endured. As the envoy's footsteps neared, Mara closed her eyes. She prayed to her ancestors, into whatever gods listened among the stars. She felt Lina's gentle breath against her cheek. The lab lights pulsed softly. Outside, the red world waited. Inside, a fragile alliance grew, forged by love and the promise of healing. Mara held Lena close as the new medicine spread warmth through her daughter's small body. Drive, Evans watched the scanner's green lines climb. She is stable, he said with relief. Mara felt her knees give way and sank to the floor, resting against the cool metal wall. Lena stirred in her arms, her eyes bright with new life. Mara pressed a gentle kiss to Lina's forehead and whispered thanks to the unknown stars. Suddenly, a warning alarm pierced the lab's quiet hum. Red lights flashed in the corners. Drive, Evans's face grew tense. They are coming, he murmured. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. The envoy's voice rang out in harsh common speech. Secure that lab at once. Doctor, Evans hit a panel, and the heavy door locked with a soft click. Mara gripped Lina's hand as the corridor outside filled with approaching boots. Drive, Evans moved quickly to a shelf and packed a small satchel. Inside went the tablet with test data, a vial of the final compound, and a folded blanket. We must reach the bridge, he said quietly. Mara nodded, lifting Lena with gentle care. The girl wrapped her arms round her mother's neck, trusting and calm. Mara whispered, I will not let them harm you. They slipped through a hidden door behind the main console. A narrow service tunnel snaked through the hull's bowels. Exposed pipes clanged overhead, and dim lights guided their path. Mara's heart pounded with each step. She held the bag in one hand and Lena in the other. Doctor, Evans led the way, tapping codes into a console beside a locked hatch. It slid open, revealing a small freight elevator. Inside the elevator, buttons glowed beside them. Doctor, Evans pressed the one marked bridge. The lift vibrated as it climbed. Mara pressed Lena close and watched the girl's chest rise and fall in a slow, steady rhythm. Outside the tiny viewport, panels of the corridor slid away. Mara felt the ship shift under her feet, a soft reminder of their journey through space. When the elevator doors opened, they entered the bridge. The room was broad and bright. Consoles lined the walls in neat rows, each manned by humans and aliens in quiet clusters. Screens flickered with data on star charts and system diagnostics. Mara placed Lena on a cushioned seat by a console and knelt beside her. Drive, Evans stood before Envoy Sorali, who loomed at the far end of the bridge, her arms folded and robes gleaming. With calm confidence, Dr. Evans raised the tablet. Envoy Sorali, council members. He called. A hush fell. He tapped the screen and displayed Lina's health graphs, her heart rate rising, her temperature falling, the medicines compounds safely integrating into her blood. He held up the small vial. This treatment saved her life. It is safe for alien physiology and can help many others. Mara watched the envoy's stern face soften slightly. The envoy spoke in cold tones through the human officer's translation. You break our laws by healing alien bodies. Why should we trust you? Doctor, Evans met her gaze. All life has value. We honor your laws and will share our methods openly. Let this child's recovery prove our goodwill. Council members leaned forward. One alien scientist in plain robes stepped forward and asked questions. How the compound was created, what ingredients it used, what side effects it carried. Dr. Evans answered each plainly. Mara felt a spark of pride as he explained in simple words, "We mix rare earth elements with organic extracts. We test carefully. We watch for any harm." The scientist nodded and exchanged a look with Envoy Sorali, the bird-like aliens. Eyes narrowed as he studied the charts. Lena reached up and touched Mara's cheek. Mara smiled and held her daughter gently. She saw other humans and aliens watching with interest. Hope stirred in their hearts. At last, Envoy Sorali lowered her staff. Her voice, though firm, held a new respect. "We will allow continued trials on this child. We will assemble a joint team to study the compound. If no harm is found after 2 more doses, we will grant permission to treat others." Mara felt tears of relief fill her eyes. She knelt and hugged Lena, pressing her face to her daughter's soft cheek. Drive Evans guided Mara and Lena to a nearby bench. He sat between them and closed the tablet. "You were brave," he said softly. Mara smiled through tears. She looked around at the bridge crew. She saw humans and aliens preparing to work together. She felt a new strength in her heart. Later, when the alarms faded and the bridge returned to its quiet hum, Mara stood at the viewport. She held Lena in her arms and looked out at the red plains below. The world seemed less harsh now. Held safe by a silver ship in orbit, inside, a promise had formed between 2 peoples. She whispered to Lena, "Soon we will go home, and they will heal many more." Lena yawned and rested her head on Mara's shoulder. Mara stroked her hair and thought of the journey ahead. More tests, more medicines, more hope. She had come seeking a miracle for her child. She had found new friends and a path to heal her world. Under the red sky, she knew that compassion could change even the toughest laws, and that together, humans and aliens could bring life back to places where hope had once been lost. Mara woke before dawn, cradling Lena in her arms. The girl's breaths were steady and calm. Through the small window of the cabin, the red world lay quiet under pale light. Mara watched Lena's chest rise and fall. She thought of the long journey they had made together. Hope had arrived, and she would guard it as fiercely as she guarded her daughter. In the med bay, a mixed team of human and alien scientists had gathered. Soft hums of machines filled the room. At the center stood a polished table with glowing panels. Drive Evans greeted Mara with a gentle smile. "Today we give the 2nd dose," he said. Mara nodded. She felt both fear and trust as she carried Lena forward. The alien scientist from the council, Dr. Sorali's advisor, stood nearby. She wore pale robes and held a small data pad. Her dark eyes showed caution, but also curiosity. Mara placed Lena on the table's soft pad. The girl looked up and saw her mother. She reached out and squeezed Mara's hand. Mara bent down and kissed Lena's forehead. Drive Evans prepared the syringe. He spoke softly to Lena, explaining that the medicine would help her body fight the illness. Lena nodded bravely. Mara watched the doctor's calm hands. The needle touched Lena's arm. Lena winced but held still. Mara pressed a cool cloth to the spot. Within moments, the girl drew a deeper breath. Around them, scientists took readings. Monitors tracked Lena's heart rate and temperature. Lines of light traced new rhythms. The alien advisor tapped her pad and adjusted a setting. The human nurse smiled when she saw the rise in Lena's warmth. Mara let out a small breath she did not know she held. Once the dose finished, Drive Evans lifted Lena into Mara's arms. He said, "She did well." Mara kissed Lena's cheek. The girl's eyes brightened as she whispered, "I am okay, Mother." Mara nodded and wrapped Lena in a soft blanket. She carried her to the waiting area. Outside the med bay, Mara saw children from a human colony visiting the ship. They wore simple clothes and laughed as they played. A small group of alien youths stood watching with shy smiles. Mara remembered how Lena had loved to chase birds in her village. She led Lena to the play area. The girl's eyes lit up at the sight of bright toys and gentle games. As Lena reached for a small robotic bird that fluttered near the floor, Mara spoke with the alien advisor. They compared notes in simple trade speech. Mara learned about new medicines that humans used on many worlds. The advisor shared tales of alien plants that held healing power. They found joy in their shared goal, to see Lena strong again. After a time, Lena tried to stand. Her legs wobbled at first, but she found strength she had not known in weeks. Mara held her hand and guided her small steps. Lena laughed when she nearly fell. Mara caught her and spun her gently. The girls' laughter echoed in the high corridors. Mara felt tears of relief fill her eyes. By midday, test results showed steady improvement. Dr. Evans and the alien scientists agreed to keep Lena on the cure for 2 more days. After that, they would release her for full recovery. Mara nodded gratefully. She held Lena close and thanked the humans and aliens who had worked together for her daughter's sake. In the afternoon, the council envoy visited with new terms. She offered Mara a council pass that would let them travel freely on the ship. She spoke words of respect and apology for the earlier harsh tone. Mara bowed her head and accepted. She saw kindness in the envoy's eyes and recognized a shared hope. That evening, a small ceremony took place in the ship's observation deck. Humans and aliens gathered under soft lights. Lena sat on Mara's lap as a human musician played a simple tune on a stringed instrument. The melody was calm and warm. Alien voices joined in, creating a gentle harmony. Mara felt peace fill her soul. After the music, Dr. Evans approached with a final dose for Lena. He spoke quietly, reminding Mara that the last treatment would ensure the illness could not return. Mara held Lena as the needle touched her skin. Lena closed her eyes and relaxed. Mara kissed her hand and whispered, "We are almost home." Late that night, Mara lay with Lena in the cabin. The girls' breathing was deep and even. Mara thought of how far they had come, from a desert hut under red suns to a silver ship among the stars. She felt gratitude and awe. She promised herself she would share the story with her people, a tale of fear turned to trust, of cultures reaching across divide to save a life. As sleep claimed them, Mara watched Lena's peaceful face. She dreamed of the day they would return to the red world below. She dreamed of laughter in her village and of new medicine that would help many. Above all, she held hope in her heart, bright as the lights of the ship that had become their sanctuary. Mara woke before the ship left orbit, her heart full of hope. Lena lay beside her, breathing calmly and smiling in sleep. The last dose of medicine had closed the chapter on the illness. Dr. Evans entered quietly, carrying a small data pad. He spoke in soft tones, "We have clearance for your journey home." Mara nodded and gathered their belongings. Lena stirred and opened her eyes, bright and curious. Mara kissed her forehead and whispered, "Today we go back." They walked through the corridor toward the airlock. Humans and aliens lined the walls, offering warm smiles and gentle nods. Mara felt gratitude well in her chest. Each face held the kindness that had saved her daughter's life. As they stepped into the landing shuttle, Mara looked back at the silver ship that had become a haven. She waved and saw Dr. Evans and the envoy Sorali standing side by side, united by hope. The shuttle shuddered into motion and descended through the thin atmosphere. Below, the red plains of Orcs stretched forever, bathed in pale light. Mara held Lena's hand as they landed near the village. Villagers gathered at the edge of the field, their robes bright against the dusty ground. When the ramp lowered, Mara carried Lena forward. The crowd fell silent and then erupted in low cheers. Mara set Lena down and knelt beside her. She said, "This is home." Lena looked at the cluster of huts and the jagged riverbed where she had first grown ill. The villagers approached slowly, some with tears in their eyes, others with hands outstretched in apology. Mara stood and embraced her people. She felt the warmth of their acceptance wash over her. An elder stepped forward, shaking. He said that he had been wrong to doubt the humans. He bowed his head and asked forgiveness. Mara placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "We all learn together." Lena approached and hugged the elder's knee. Villagers gathered around and offered fresh fruit and water. Lena tasted the fruit and laughed as its sweetness filled her mouth. In the days that followed, human scientists and alien healers built a small clinic at the village edge. Dr. Evans and his team worked with local healers to teach them how to prepare the new medicine. Mara watched as they mixed powders and herbs, blending human science with alien tradition. She felt proud to see the cultures cooperating for the common good. Lena grew stronger each day. She ran across the cracked stone and chased the small dessert. Birds and villagers smiled at her laughter. Mara walked beside Lena, gathering stones and singing old songs. She thought of the traders' tales and smiled at how truth could exceed legend. She thanked the humans and promised to tell this story for generations. Envoy Sorali returned to witness the progress. She stood beside Mara and watched a healer's apprentice draw blood for a test. When the results showed health, Sorali nodded and said, "Your people will live longer, thanks to these methods." Mara smiled and offered her hand. The envoy shook it firmly. A treaty was drawn that day, granting humans landing rights and establishing medical exchange between worlds. That evening, under a sky of red light and pale stars, Mara held Lena close by the riverbed. They watched glowing insects dance over the water. Mara whispered, "We found hope among the stars." Lena leaned against her and said, "I will tell everyone how the humans helped me." Mara kissed her daughter's hair and promised, "We will share this gift of life." As night settled, villagers lit small fires and played soft music. Humans joined in, bringing new melodies on stringed instruments. Aliens danced and laughed together. Mara stood at the edge of the circle, holding Lena's hand. She felt a bond between worlds stronger than fear. She remembered the hum of the ship and the care she had found there when the candles burned low. Mara carried Lena inside their hut. She laid her daughter on a woven mat and covered her with a warm blanket. Lena closed her eyes, her body healthy and whole. Mara sat by the firelight and watched the flames. She thought of how one human's kindness had changed everything. In the quiet that followed, Mara looked at the dark ceiling and smiled. A new chapter had begun for her people. She would teach her daughter how to heal and to trust. She would share stories of two worlds coming together. Above all, she held hope in her heart, a flame that would never fade.